Okay, hi everybody. This is Pesach Sherbo from Tzfat Israel. Welcome to Bnei Noach Connection with Israel. Open room, come on in. We're here Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we simply get together and we socialize and questions. Tzfat Israel, in case I didn't mention it, it is April Fool's Day. It's the 1st of April over here where I am. And it is 5:17 in the morning. We got started late because we had a power outage that just came back on just a few minutes ago. So we're glad to be with everybody. And we have with us Emanuela and Tony and Miriam Jacob. And I'm so glad that you guys are here with us. And let's see. I tried to put it on speaker view, but it didn't. Oh no, it's gallery view. All right, I'm trying to recording a little bit different this week. I might as well take these off because they're not working. So much fun. Things work, don't work. Let me get the volume turned up. Anyway, of course, Corona is what everybody talks about today. And here in Israel, the situation is we have about 5,000, a little over 5,000 people that are confirmed, and we've had 20 deaths now. Basically, old geezers like me, people with underlying health conditions. But it seems like, and I'm going to say this with words that I'm speaking that should go only to the ears of God, that we're pretty much getting it under control here in Israel. We're on a total lockdown, can't leave the house unless it's medical or grocery store, and the store's open in the morning for older people at 7 now, from 7 to 8:30. And that's the story here in Israel right now. The schools probably not going to start till the end of August like it always does. It's just their schools are out. And if you need a doctor, guess what happens? You get to call them on a teleconference. And if you don't have the ability to do that, you're in trouble. They do have phone conferences, but they prefer the teleconference. And behind me there today is the Sea of Galilee and one of the boats that takes tourists around from place to place on the Sea of Galilee. And the hill on the other side that goes up to the Golan Heights. Most people don't know, but Israel is the last country in Asia. We're actually on the continent of Asia. And that Golan Heights is where if you go up there, you're on the level of the rest of Asia, and it just drops down. And when you leave Israel, you go into the continent of Africa. And you can drive down there, and drive out into the desert, if you want, into Egypt. If you drive into Jordan, you're still in Asia. If you go to Egypt, you end up in Africa. And if somebody wanted to, and I've known people that did it, they started in South Africa. They drove all the way up the continent of Africa. Then they drove into Israel. And it used to be they could drive from Israel to Lebanon to Turkey and right over to Europe. But thanks to the disagreements with our neighbors, they've cut us off. So someone that wants to go to Europe from here just gets on a ferry and they go to Greece from here. And there are ships that go back and forth. It used to be every day. I don't know what it is today with everything going on in the world. They even had a high-speed one that you would go, it would just take a few hours. But most people didn't like traveling like that. It was kind of a rough ride on the Mediterranean Sea. A little bit of history, a little bit of information. Another little piece of history is we here in Tzfat are where the original Shem Be'ever school was, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob learned from Shem and Eber after the flood. it isn't publicized a lot because the people who actually have control of the cave, it's a congregation here in Tzfat called Shem Ba'ever, a Jewish congregation, and they don't like tourists tramping all over the cave. So it's only used for special events. It's used for weddings, bar mitzvahs, circumcisions. Right now, it's not used for anything because we're not allowed to do those things here in Israel. We're not allowed to have more than 2 people together at any one time. And they're using drones to watch us and police helicopters. There is a portion of our public here that they don't pay attention to any of that stuff. And it doesn't help with controlling what's going on. So, Tony, Emuela, Miriam, anybody have anything they want to talk about or bring up or say, just grab a mic.
I have a question. The gentleman that was on last night from Washington, and I know he's been in his practice for a long time, but you know, the kippah thing and the tallit. What's your view on that?
Well, actually, see, I didn't question him about it, but generally it's frowned upon because you're adding something to who you are, and you're identifying with another group in that manner. So when people look at you, they think that you're Jewish. And he may do it just to invite questions. That's fine. But it's basically frowned upon. Quick story, it happened up in Jerusalem about 3 years ago. I saw on one of the Messianic websites, because I tracked some of those too, someone put up a post. She was so proud of her husband because he was walking down the street in Jerusalem and some guy ran out and grabbed him by the arm and said, "Come on inside, we need you to make a minyan," because he had on the tzitzit, the fringes, and he had on the yarmulke. So they went inside, and they thanked him so profusely afterwards for stopping in and said, "You know, you can leave now, thank you very much." They had no idea who he was, but he was dressed like a Jew. And he didn't help them at all. He actually injured the other 9 people because we're told we can't, the Jew has, if you're going to have a group of people, you have to have at least 10 men to go through to say specific prayers. And they said those prayers thinking they had 10 men, Jewish men. And the wife is saying, "Oh, I'm so proud they called him in, and that." And I wrote back, I said, "You know, all your husband did was injure the other 9 because they were praying incorrectly that morning. So what do I think about a kippah? No. You want to wear a hat, wear a hat. That's fine. You want to have your head covered before God, wear it. But don't impersonate." Does that answer your question?
Oh, it wasn't a question. I agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, we're not, he seems like he's, you know, he said he's been in this for 22 years. He's doing everything you would do. So what's holding him back from converting?
I don't know that he's really doing everything I would do. He's hooked to a Chabad house there. When you go in the Chabad house, a visitor comes, they ask to cover their head. So if he goes there to study and he goes there for other reasons, then he would cover his head inside the building and where they know who he is, and they wouldn't count him in a minyan. But many times when we go to a minyan, we'll see a new person there, and we're counting for 10, and we'll ask the person, "Are you Jewish?" And many times we get the answer, "No, I'm in the midst of conversion." And then the person says, "Yes, I know I can't be counted in the minyan. When you see me, don't count me." I mean, they know that.
Mm-hmm.
So someone in the process of conversion, until they've converted, can't be counted in the minyan. So, look, God created each one of us to be who we are. Doesn't make any difference, Jew or Gentile. He created you to be who you are, and that's the way we're supposed to be. People that go for conversion, there's two different groups of people that go. There's the people that decide intellectually that they want to do it. And there's people that have burned so hot in their heart that they have to do it. They have no choice, essentially. Their free choice has been taken away. Someone who makes the decision intellectually should stay away from it. There's no reason to take on that yoke. It's a yoke. It's a burden to live a life that way. And I mean, I was saying it's not joyful. Of course, it's joyful, but to have to learn these things and do all these things when you weren't born into it. If I wasn't born being a Jew, I'd be a happy Noahide. It's that simple. But I was born here. This is the way God put me. I can't tell him, no, I don't want to be this. I'm going to go be a Noahide. I can't tell him that. He said, no, no, no. I created you to be a Jew. You're going to be a Jew. So the Gentiles have to realize they were created to be what we call today Noahide, or the righteous Gentiles. And it's really important for us to know that. It's the whole world has to know this, including the Jews. We had a little get together last night. How do we go over to friends' houses nowadays? Either Skype or Zoom, because we can't leave the house. We do everything virtually. So we all take our glass of wine or our shot glass, and we do it that way. But the person I was with, I was talking to, he's a Chabad guy, but he's rah, rah, rah Chabad, and everything else, okay, well, if the Gentile wants to pray, wants to believe in the God of Israel, that's fine, but I got nothing to do with that. A lot of Jews have that attitude because this is the way the attitude has been of Jews for quite a long time, because we get injured if we overstep our bounds in the Gentile world. So we're running and hiding and, making sure that there's somebody for the next generation to go forward. So now we're here where we can all, we can turn around and face the Gentile and say, look, here's all the information we're supposed to give over to you. And then you guys, of course, can pick and choose. Yeah, no, don't want to stay where I am, or yeah, I want to come into the reality of the God of Israel. It's not a religion, as I keep telling people. Hi, Diana. A lot of the Jews want to call themselves religion because everybody's used to that. But when you research it, we're not. We're a tribe with a way of life, a nation with a way of life. And we're the longest surviving group of people on this planet. There's no other group of people that have been around 4,000 years, generation to generation, which is, to me, it's like a miracle. God, there has to be a creator and somebody doing pushing things forward. To me, it's even a miracle mankind as a whole has survived since Noah, with the way we treat the planet and everything else. But I guess this is the time that God has been waiting for. We're coming into the Messianic era. We're going down the birth canal. The contractions are happening, and everybody's in pain a little bit. And not that God caused what's happening right now to punish anybody. I don't believe that at all, because God is a good and loving God, and why would he want to hurt his children? Some human being or human beings have caused what is happening in the world today. Now, God could stop it, but the minute he gets involved in something like that, and we all realize, wow, there really is a God, and he really stopped it, guess what? We lose our free choice. What? There's a God? He really is there? Well, I can't do anything. And then everybody starts running to look and make sure that they follow all the rules and they do everything that God wills, or most people, not everybody will. And that's not why he wants you to come and walk with him. It has to be our free choice to walk with him. Each one of you have made a free choice to do what you're doing. He doesn't want to put you in a position where he's forcing you to make the choice. In Deuteronomy, he says, look, I give you life. Now you get to choose. Choose life or choose death. I mean, it's very clear. He says, I hope that you all choose life. But it's our choice. You know, if you were in McDonald's and somebody ordered a bacon cheeseburger, which, you know, for a Jew can't eat the ham and can't eat the cheese and the meat all cooked together and all that kind of stuff. But if the person who ate the bacon cheeseburger all of a sudden got hit by lightning or by fire like Aaron's sons, everybody in there would say, they just dropped their food. Can't do this anymore. Now, what happened at that instant? Yeah, the guy got punished, but what happened to everybody else? They lost their free choice. If I eat this, I'm going to get hit by lightning, so they drop it. Well, God doesn't want that to be that way. He doesn't want to take the belt out and make us do these things without having free choice in the matter. What happens? You know, let me tell you a story. They were at a meeting, I guess, I don't know, let's call it a open meeting or a PTA meeting or something. It was a mother and a child around 10 years old, and he was causing a little trouble. And the mother says, go sit down right now. And he says, no, I'm not sitting down. And keeps on doing this. And he goes to him again and says, go sit down and be quiet. And he didn't. Finally, she picks him up, sets him down, goes like this and says, you speak again, I'm taking the belt. And the kid says, okay, I'll sit down. And he goes and sits down like this. And then in his head, he said, you just think I'm sitting down. I'm really standing up. I'm not doing what you told me to do. Well, God, the kid in his mind was doing what he wanted to do. But God doesn't want us to be that way. If he tells us go sit down, he wants us to say, yes, I'm going to sit down. Not, uh-oh, if I don't sit down, he's going to beat, the belt, the fire from heaven or whatever. It's complicated, but it's easy. He's not going to force us to do anything. We have to do it of our own free will. I kind of liken it, and we've all had aunts or grandparents or somebody like this. Every time they come over to the house when you were a kid, they'd come over and pinch your cheek and say, oh, tell your aunt you love her. Tell me you love me. And yank on the cheek or something. And so the kid would say, yeah, I love you. I love you. Why? No choice. He's getting pain here. I think everybody's had some kind of relative like that at one point in time in their life. God doesn't want to be that kind of relative. He wants, when you look at him or think about him, he wants to feel the love in your heart for him. It's so important to him. That's why we were created. We were created to finish creation, bring us, which is essentially, we call it, we're building a house for God right here on this earth. Because as Jews, we don't believe there's a heaven and earth. We know that God is pulled away from us, if you call it whatever you want, but he wants to be here among us. He told us that back when we were building the first tent of meeting for him. And so we're supposed to make the place ready. Everything we do is to bring him closer to earth. Zvi Freeman at the Chabad, Rabbi Freeman says, we're bringing heaven down to earth, which I like doing that. Okay, good night, Miriam. And don't forget, tomorrow night's 8 p.m. And then next Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, we'll be back on the air. I forget what day Pesach is, but maybe Tuesday, yeah, will be the last day next week. At the 8 p.m. meeting, Terry's going to host.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for coming. Okay, I got a little carried away there in answering a question, but anyway, anybody have anything they want to talk about or something?
I was just curious. I have a kippah that I bought before we went down to Purim because I didn't know if they were going to ask me to put one on. I was wearing my driver cap. They never asked me to put it on. I wore my driver cap. It never came out of my pocket. So,
Well, you don't need to wear a kippah and a shawl. You need to wear a head covering.
Right.
So, like Chabad, their tradition is both. Many people don't wear both. But there comes a time, excuse me, there is a time in prayer that you put your prayer shawl on. If you have some other kind of hat on, it disturbs it. So lots of times you'll just see Jewish people walking around with just a kippah on like this. And then we go to prayer, and some of them were little teeny ones. And I don't really, people with no hair, I don't know how they keep them on their head. I'm thinking double-sided tape. I never asked anybody. But yeah, we keep our head covered and we walk around all the time outside to show our I don't know, obedience to God or something like that. But yeah, you don't have to take off a hat. If you're wearing a hat, that's good enough for anybody that comes in. Good enough as a hat.
and I get where he's coming from. Everybody wants to play their part. So,
Yes. So, anybody have anything else you want to talk about? All right.
there was a discussion the other day about the origin of the 7 laws and where do they all come out of the Torah? Where do they come from? Who said it? Why are we following this?
Yeah, that's a little bit complicated because the original 6 laws were given to Adam, and we know they were. How do we know they were given to Adam? The story of Cain and Abel. How would welcome, Bonnie? Thanks for joining. Good to see you. How can God go to Cain and say that you've sinned, you've murdered? How can he accuse him of murder if Cain didn't already know that it was bad? If he had to know, it was already murder. So we know that Adam and Eve were given 6 laws, and they went from there to Enosh to Methuselah to Noah, and then when Noah came out of the ark, there was added the 7th law, which was don't eat a limb of a living animal. And the reason he did that and took off and allowed us to eat meat, he knew we were going to do it anyway. So he said, okay, if you're going to have to do that, then I'm going to give you some rules and regulations, what you can do and can't do. And this is kind of like, there's another prohibition he gave us that we realized that he did it just because he knew we were going to do something anyway. And that's in the laws of war, when you when the warriors go out and capture women and bring them back home, there's some very specific rules how to treat them. And the first thing is you have to let them mourn their loss of their families or being away from their families for the first 30 days. And the women are not allowed to dress pretty. They're not allowed to put on makeup. They can't cut their fingernails. And during that 30 days, the man has to decide whether he's going to marry her or not. He cannot keep her captive unless he actually marries her. And so he knew during war, everybody's emotions get churned up. And back in the day, one of the tactics of defending your village and your town was the unmarried women, basically, but some of the married women that would do this also, they got dressed up kind of provocatively, in other words, very pretty, and they would be standing around where all the warriors coming toward the village could see them. You know, it wasn't like, poof, they're there. They ride horses or they walk across the fields, and they see the women there, and their emotions are so worked up that all the emotions get worked up. So God said, okay, if you're going to do this, I'm going to tell you how you're going to do it. So that's what happened with the eating with the meat also came into effect. But we know that God then taught these to Shem and Ever, who taught them to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And at Mount Sinai, in the oral law, they were given again to Moses by God. He says, this is the 10 commandments for the Jewish people. And here's what I want the rest of the world to do. And the 10 commandments, how do we know it's only for the Jewish people? If you truly read the 10 commandments, the very first one says, Anochi Hashem, I, God, am the God that brought you out of Egypt. The very first one. Now, what people did God bring out of Egypt?
Yeah.
Right. Now, in subsequent generations, he brings everybody out of their own individual Egypts. But at that point in history, that's what he was talking about. And that's written, chiseled in stone. And that's why certain religions felt that they could change what was there because they knew it wasn't for them. They knew that they were not being straight with people. So you can't do a chapter and verse thing with this, Tony. But the sages in the Gemara and the Talmud all talk about when and where certain things happened, that we understand that this is what happened. The Torah, if somebody accepts it only in black and white, they have no idea what they're talking about. The Torah is a code that God gave us. It's a very intricate code that he's given certain people the ability to decipher. Last night, Cole asked me about the beginning word of this week's parasha, Vayikra. And he asked about the aleph at the end of it, the A at the end, big A, little a. Well, he knew the answer already because otherwise he probably wouldn't have known about the big A, little a, but he wanted to hear it again for reinforcement or something. But how would we know that this is so if our sages hadn't interpreted it for us? There's a secret about the Torah. What we see in black and white, we can accept as black and white. We can't make any interpretations from it. Black and white, that's it. But as we're reading it year after year and time after time, all of a sudden we see words we haven't seen before. They kind of make an impression on your mind. Now, why do they do this? Because you have gained more information, and the information you have gained allows you to see something a little more. And what happens is, as you see more, you realize, wait a minute, these words I'm reading, they're telling me there's something more inside of them than just what I'm reading. And they give you a hint of that. And then when you go looking for those words, for that information, and you go to people that have already can help you out with the studying of it, you start to get a stronger understanding. So it's in 4 levels. You have the black and white, then you have the hint that there's something more, then you have the looking for the something more, and then you come to the answer of the something more. But once you get the answer, what has happened? You realize you're back to simple because you understand it. And underneath this deep understanding, whoops, there's more levels to learn. And we thank God every day that we have guys that can read it and the guys that can help us out. And they've been doing it for 3,300 years, studying those words. And we know for sure you can't take the Torah black and white. The Torah is all of God's creation. How it's going to be created, what everything is going to happen, everything is in there. They've developed a code, not a code, a computer program a few years back where you can find in Torah just about any question you ask it. You can even you can write in there, I mean, it was in there about the Kennedy assassination, it was in there about these, anything that happened. Probably, if someone looks and runs it through this program, it'll tell us, oh yeah, if we had read and looked deep enough, we'd have known about this coronavirus thing. All of creation is in there, in that book. And why has it been separated to 2 parts, the written and the oral? Imagine if God had told Moses to write it all down, he'd still be up there on Mount Sinai writing it down. He wouldn't have been able to bring it down on 2 stone tablets, or as we think it was just 1 tablet with 2 columns on it. So there's so many things we don't understand, and we have to, if we take the road that, well, because I think this is what it is, then it doesn't work at all. You just end up somewhere wandering around by yourself in the end. And also that's why certain groups split and form new groups, and this one's opinion is this and this one's opinion is that. Because even though, and everybody knows where you got 2 Jews, you got 3 opinions. It's allowed. But you know what? We look at it this way. You've probably, if you have read different books about the Torah portions each week, this rabbi writes this is one thing, and the next rabbi writes this, and the next rabbi writes this, and there's all kinds of different looking at it. And we just say they're all right. Why? Because you can't prove one right and you can't prove one wrong. So it's okay to think just to wander through everything they've written. And you don't have to say, well, if you don't believe this thing, then I'm not going to be friends with you, or you're not part of our group. That's not the way it works. You have to be really open-minded, other than things that are very specifically listed. Like, I can't be open-minded about what kind of meat I can eat. I can't be open-minded about how it's going to be slaughtered. I can't be open-minded about what day is the Sabbath. All these things are very specific things, but when we look at understanding the Torah, there's a saying, you may have heard it, the Torah has 70 faces. 70 is a big number with God. 70 faces, 70 nations. Today there's 215 nations, but there's only 70. All of them are part of one of the original 70 nations. And that'll be back that way when the Messiah comes. So what I'm getting at is you have to be very open-minded And the one thing you have to do is put aside what you think. You know, I was been teaching for a lot of years, and I tell people when they say, I think this or that, I tell them, don't think, listen. Because if you go into any teacher, I don't care what the person's teaching, it can be in university, philosophy, anything. And the teacher is teaching something, and you're saying, well, I don't think it's this way. I think it's that way. Nah, you ain't right. Nah, 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 nah. What have you learned? Nothing. So when you hear things, you don't make an opinion. You shut yourself up. You don't think. There was a movie with a robot. It was a comedy. And he would always say, more info, more info, more info. I want more information to process in my mind or in his computer banks. And that's what we're supposed to do. Now, we know that there's certain things that totally God doesn't agree with, and that's fine. The definition of idol worship is pretty clear. The definition of how you treat people is pretty clear. The way you treat animals is pretty clear. The way we treat the earth is pretty clear. But all these other things, if we just don't think about them, just put the information in our head, eventually the information comes down to what you're going to be thinking the way God's thinking, which makes you think like him and he thinks like you. The minute that you say, well, I used to teach people and I talk about a Bible verse, and someone would always say, well, I interpret it this way. I think this way. I think that way. And I said, that's fine. You can do that. But it doesn't make any difference what a person thinks. What I think makes no difference. Only what God thinks makes a difference. My opinion about stuff means about this much in the whole scheme of things, if it even means this much. The truth is the truth is the truth. God knows what the truth is. He puts it in front of each one of us every single day. And if we want to reject it, he allows us to reject it. He allows things like the coronavirus to occur on Earth. And 100 years ago, almost exactly 100 years ago, it was the Spanish influenza that went around the world and did the same thing. So you as a person, the most important thing you can do for yourself is not think. Now, I'm not saying, sure used to tell me, that's so stupid to tell somebody that. And I said, well, I don't know how else to say it. When you're listening to a subject that has to do with God, first take in the information and then think about it. And don't let anybody ever tell you accept it on faith. Biggest lie in the world. Either it's true or it's not true. You don't have to accept it on faith. God is true or he's not true. You get to make the decision. Whether God exists or not, if you decide he doesn't, or you want to question it, you're allowed to do that. But it doesn't change the truth of the matter. People that give these blatant opinions and they give you a hard time about the way you think, all it is their opinion. It has nothing to do with God. Once you're on that road, once you're walking with God, once you see the truth, and you may have to go through 100 different things before you actually see it. I did, where the truth was. But once you get the information in your head and it processes it, most people come up with the truth as long as you don't say, I think that about this. You have to be humble about it. You have to know that your opinion about any certain matter that has to do with God doesn't change the truth of God. And it's an important thing to remember. And it's not demeaning. It's not something that makes you less than somebody else. It makes you smarter because you simply realize that the truth is going to be the truth. A lemon's going to be bitter every time you bite into it, and that's the truth. I've never bitten into a sweet lemon in my whole life. And a clementine or a tangerine, I never know if it's going to be sweet or not. A lemon, I know the truth is it's bitter every time. I know that when I peel a tangerine, I'm going to find out what the truth of that tangerine is. Once I take the bite, it's going to be sweet or bitter to my mouth. When I drink wine, the taste that I get, and I don't like wine a whole lot because most wine to me tastes bitter, to other people it doesn't. So I don't know. That's my truth is wine is bitter. And I don't have to think about it. It is. It's the truth. When it goes in my mouth, it tastes bitter. Except for one or two brands, not brands, but brands of grapes. Our lives are in our control. We can choose to walk it in a fog, or we can actually look for the truth and allow the truth to tell us where it is, not for us to say this is true and what you think is not true. One of the most amazing reads you can read is Ecclesiastes. But then you have to study what's being said because it blows my mind, and I read it over and over again. The guy that asked God to have wisdom, and he's been the wisest person that ever lived on the earth. Not the most humble, not he wasn't a prophet, but he was wise. And he says that everything's vanity. But it's not the word, there's no word in Hebrew for vanity. The words in Hebrew says everything's a mist. It's there and it blows away and there's something else there and there's no reality but God. And in the last closing verses, he states it very clearly. Chapter 12, right down the end, I think verses 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. He says, fearing God, that's awe and love, fear God, and doing what God says, in the Christian Bibles it says it's the duty of man. That's not, the word in Hebrew doesn't say duty. What it says, it makes you a complete human being. That's the completion point of every human being if you get there. It makes you totally 100% a human being. Until you get there, you're still carrying some of that animal with you. The animal that is our emotions that we react to. When we go on to the next level of life, when we graduate from this class and go on to the next one, we're not going to even have to worry about that because we're not going to have the animal body with us. We are taught that there's a different type of body we get. It may look the same, but it's not going to have the animal instincts in it that we have now. That's our biggest problem is our animal instincts and trying to control them. Anger, impatience, pride, all those things are just animal instincts. So I'm kind of looking forward not to have that battle in me anymore because sometimes it's hard to make yourself humble. It's hard because the word humble has a negative meaning to it. If you humble yourself before someone, it's like a fawning, like you're better than I am type thing in English. But that's not what it means in Hebrew. When you humble yourself, you take that animal side and put it aside and don't let it affect the truth of things. Moses was that guy. And a couple of times he actually got up in God's face. It was pretty cool. I love it when I think in one of the longest conversations recorded between God and a human being is God and Moses. It recorded in the Tanakh when he was talking to him about, you're going to go lead the people out of Egypt. But the leading the people out of Egypt is an event that happened to show us that we have to do that every day of our lives. Every day of our lives, we have to grow and make ourselves better and push away those evil influences. And when you do that, people see your difference, how different you are. And what happens is they become different towards you, and they may actually become different towards other people. So you're improving their lives also. It's that being humble, knowing that what comes, look, I sit here and I'm saying all this to you guys. This isn't, what I'm trying to do is not give you my opinion, but what I've learned through the Torah and through the sages that I've read. And whether you take this information in or not, that's up to you. And it makes no difference to me how you treat that information. If you tell me, well, I don't think that's right, I think it's a different way, that's fine with me. You may do that. You know what helps me be humble is I realize that every single person you come in contact with is in the image of God, and he doesn't take away from them their choice to think whatever they want about him or about anything. He doesn't force on anybody. Now, God is powerful. And like that, everything would disappear. All life, all everything, if he wanted to do that. But he doesn't. He's proven that to us over and over again. Once you realize that, you realize my opinion doesn't mean it. Doesn't mean anything. All I can do is pass information for other people to use. They want to use it, use it. Don't want to use it, I have to say it's okay. It doesn't change the way I think about that person. Because who am I to dislike somebody for what they think when God doesn't do that? He lets them think the way they want to think. I'm certainly not God. So if somebody wants to think that way, it's okay. Because God makes it okay. However you think, God makes it okay. Whether you're thinking in a proper manner or improper manner or whatever happens, he allows you to do it. You have to discover the path. You have to know how you should think. Because we're created in his image, one of the things we should do is, and this is how I've been running my life for quite a few years. Wait a minute. What does God think about this first? If I'm going to get angry at somebody, what does God think about this first? No, I shouldn't do it. Okay, so I won't be angry at them. Even if they hurt my feelings, even if they step on my toe, whatever does it make? It doesn't make a bit of difference. The minute somebody gets angry about something, like it used to bother me if I'm in a crowd and somebody would come by and push me or jostle me. How dare you do that to me? And I realized what there is in me. This behavior is allowed. It's okay. What isn't allowed is to physically injure somebody. What isn't allowed is to slander somebody. What isn't allowed is to tell the truth about somebody to better yourself. You know, somebody says, oh, I really like this guy, this person over here, da, 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 da. You said, wait a minute, didn't you know that this person does X, Y, Z? That's not allowed. It's called Lashon Hara, the bad tongue. Bad tongue is not lying and not slandering, because slandering has its own category. Lying has its own category. The bad tongue is telling the truth about somebody to make yourself look better than that person. So I try to not say anything bad about anybody, no matter what I think about what they're saying. And if somebody comes in and asks me questions, I usually will not. Now, there are times when I will do that. Somebody comes in and say, well, do you like this bakery over here or that bakery over there? I'll say, I like that one over there. Why? Well, I just like that one better. For me, it's better. I won't say whatever reason it is. If you know someone's doing business with somebody that's a thief, and someone comes to you and asks a specific question or tells you they're doing business with that person, you're allowed, but you better know it for sure. You're allowed to tell that person, be careful in your business dealings with this person. What you're not allowed to do is say, well, I know this friend of mine of a friend, and this and this and this happened. That you can't do. But you're allowed, if someone asks you a specific question. Now, people come to me all the time and ask me about different rabbis. Should I learn from this rabbi or that rabbi, or this rabbi said this or that rabbi said that? All I'm allowed to say is that I prefer to listen to this rabbi instead of that rabbi when I'm learning. I prefer to do this instead of that. We're not allowed to, because each individual should know by themselves. If you actually open yourself up for information, if you're not just looking for a rabbi to confirm what you think is right, then you're on the right track. And there's a couple of things that go into finding a good teacher. One of them is that he will not talk bad about any other teacher, period. No matter what he thinks about that teacher, no matter what the person teaches, he's not going to knock another teacher. And he's just not going to come out and give you a list. I saw the other day, excuse me one second, on the internet, posted on some Noahide sites, some excuse me, some rabbi that was a teacher of a person gave a list of what they put non-kosher rabbis. That's forbidden to do that. But no matter what he thinks, I looked at the list and I know the guy doesn't know what he's talking about because there's some of my friends on that list, so I know they're very kosher rabbis. But when you get a rabbi doing stuff like that or teaching stuff like that, you want to be around the person. What is he doing? He's doing what we're told not to do. Don't think. Give information. Don't give your opinion. Anyway, that's about that. And I even forget the question I was asked that got me there. But you guys are intelligent, and you know, and you've come this far in this walk that you're seeing a broader and broader view of the real truth, which is important, really important. Anybody have anything to say? Any questions? Go ahead, Emanuela.
I posted on my Facebook a question. It was something I read in the Torah, but I don't know who to ask the question to. So I asked on my Facebook, and I didn't know where to post it.
Can you type me in the question, or if you want to, just type it in and let me look at it. See, you don't, when you have a teacher, and everyone should have a teacher, it's nice to learn from a lot of the stuff that people teach. And, you know, you got Y.Y. Jacobson, you got Manus Freeman, and you got all the rabbis, Svi Freeman, and the whole list of rabbis, Chaim Richman, and the list goes on and on and on. And everybody jumps around and listens to this one, listens to this one, listens to this one. They're not your teachers. You should have a teacher you go to, you see, that you have a relationship with, that you can go to that person and ask the question. And you should
I
trust.
don't have one.
Well, that's,
Except you.
then here I am. Ask me the question. See, you got to have a go-to person for questions.
And I used to have Sam Pete.
Yes, may his
And
memory
I
be blessed.
learned a lot from him.
Yes,
And you talk just like him.
that's a compliment.
I mean, he was my first teacher.
I didn't get to know him till he was already sick, unfortunately. And Shira, she used to go to Abilene twice a year when we had the money, and she made arrangements to go meet them, and he was just too sick at that point to meet her. But Jim Long told me about him, and there was a couple other guys that told me about him. I talked to him on the phone once for about 2 hours.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah. That was when he was in the earlier little bit stages of the illness. But no, you can't survive without a teacher. I have someone I go to. I have a go-to person. But every teacher you know, name me a name of any rabbi you listen to, they have a go-to person. You're never the top level. If you think you're the top level, you got a problem. You got to have a go-to person. And it has to be someone you trust. There's a relationship there.
Right now, you're it.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. Well, just send me the question on Facebook Messenger, put it in here. Sometimes you have to think about a question before you give an answer. You can't just give an off-the-cuff answer.
My problem is I have well, they never said I had a learning disability, but I have a block. It's hard for me to put on paper what I'm thinking. I end up saying it backwards.
You mean you end up writing it backwards, but you can say it okay?
I say it okay, but my thoughts become jumbled on the paper.
Well, you guess what? On Facebook Messenger, I think there's a way to record your question and send it that way. You don't have to type it out. You just
Never tried that.
try that. I don't know how long they allow you to do it, you know, for what period of time, but a lot of I have a lot of back and forth with a lot of people that don't. I hate typing and going through a whole lot of. Why do you think I just speak all the time? I don't write books. I don't. That's one of the reasons I don't write books. The other reason is I can write a book today, and a year from now, I'd be ashamed of what I wrote and want to throw it away and do another book. So, and then somebody's going to come along and read something I wrote 10 years ago, which is completely different than the way I'm thinking now. And it's once you write it out, it's kind of chiseled in stone, so to speak. So most of my stuff I record. I've been doing it for years. Find a way, Manuela, to record, and if you wish, send it to me in recordings through Facebook Messenger, or I can give you my email and you can send it to, I think you have my email, and send it to me that way. And If it's easier for you to do it that way, do it that way. Don't type it out. Speak it out.
Hey, thank you.
Okay?
Toda Rabah.
Alo davar. It's nothing.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, hi, Amuela. I just want you to know that Pesach was my teacher. Oh my gosh, how many years ago when I lived in Vancouver?
Yeah.
And he gave me some of the most excellent, memorable advice. He's a very good teacher. He's a very wise man, and I think that would be a good thing for you. And it's good to be reconnected again.
Yes, it is. I saw that that we've connected again, but then you kind of disappeared for a couple of weeks. So I didn't know what happened. So.
It's been a wild, crazy ride. I don't even want to go into all the details, but I'm what I call, well, I guess I'm a Noahide now. It's kind of funny how we're on the same path and then and boom,
Yeah.
all back together again. It's so cool. I have been busy with this coronavirus. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started 14, well, now it's 15 Zoom meetings in the last couple of weeks. So I've been busy trying to help alcoholics be able to have a way to stay sober and recover. And it's funny because what brought me into this path of Torah, serious Torah study, was I was in a Messianic congregation, and somebody said, you should go to Chabad. They have a recovery section on there that talks about the 12 steps. And I went there and they related the 12 steps to the Torah portion. And wow, it changed my life. And I live in Wisconsin now, by the way. And there's a congregation about 30 miles away from me that's conservative. And I'm thinking about, I haven't gone to worship, but I do spend every weekend, every Sabbath, on my computer listening to all of the Chabad teachings, and just really glad to be around other real life people. So I want to get more involved. Right now I'm right up to here with trying to help all of these alcoholics that are in my life. So
That's a very good thing to do. I mean, I know all the work you've done over the years, and it's a good thing to do, and you're doing what God created you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important thing. You just do what God creates you to do, and you don't have to be anybody else than that.
And the other thing I wanted to say, Chaim Richmond used to come to Minnesota, and I used to go visit him and his wife, and he said something very memorable, probably 20 years ago, I think, that if you want to know what's going on in the news, read your Torah portion. And 2 weeks ago, they were talking about the coronavirus in the Torah portion. And, it's just kind of like, oh, wow. But it's just really amazing how alive and relevant the Torah is today. It's just, I cannot imagine a better way of living than the way I'm living now. I'm so glad that I finally found what I was seeking all along, and that was the truth.
That's
So
good.
thank you. Thank you for being a part of my journey.
That's good. I don't, you know what? That's a good question. I'll have to look it up, Manuela. I don't know. All I know is every morning they're supposed to take them out. I don't know if they're still hot enough to start another fire or not. I don't think so, but I'm going to look it up. I just want to verify. I already know what I think I know, but I just want to make sure I'm telling you the truth. So I'll look it up and then get back to you on that.
And I used to go camping when I was younger. And I know when they took the ashes out of the fire, it's still hot. It still has life. So I'm wondering, that the Kohen wait until it cools down before they take it out of the camp?
Now, I don't know, and I'm going to have to check it out, because the ashes is taken out are the burned ashes of the sacrifices. That's the ashes this is referring to. He's cleaning where the burnt offerings of the sacrifices were. He's not talking about the ashes from the wood underneath. So, and one of the things that I'm reading something now, hopefully it'll give me the answer. There were two types of fire on the altar. It says that God's fire consumed the sacrifices. That means it would have been a fire that came down from heaven to burn the sacrifices. But all they burned was what they were directed at, and you could be standing right next to it and it wouldn't feel even hot to you.
Awesome.
It's just, you know, we can talk about the burning bush. He saw the fire there, but it didn't consume the bush. Burning fire that didn't eat the bush. It left it normal. When Nadav and Avihu got their little crispy critter thing that happened, people standing right next to them, nothing happened. When they took the wrong incense into the Holy of Holies. So God, the fire that God brings down will consume what it's aimed at. If someone's in a group of 1,000 people and they're standing shoulder to shoulder, it's only going to touch that one person that God wants to touch. So, but it will leave ash. It will leave ash. Look, it only burned so much of Nadav and Avihu, they were still buried. It totally consumed the offerings on the fire. There's the fire that turned them into total ash was not the fire that was built underneath the altar. The one underneath the altar, and I'm reading it now, I want to know exactly why it was there, but all around the walls of the courtyard, there were like grills built into the wall, and they had fire there too. And if the Kohen gets this piece, they go and throw it on the grill so it doesn't go bad, and then he eats it that evening and things like that. When I think about it, it makes my mouth water. You know, what's greater than eating something roasted on an open fire? I don't care what it is, vegetable or animal. It just had a beautiful taste to it. And all of Jerusalem must have smelled like that.
Most days at my house.
I love that. Go ahead, Emanuela.
Because I was thinking, if it's live and then taking it outside the camp where the Noahites are, like the multitude.
No, they had a special place outside the camp and outside the holy temple. It was only a place where you could put the ashes. It wasn't used for anything else, and it wasn't given to anybody else.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Now that even includes the sacrifices that the non-Jewish people brought up there. Everybody was allowed to sacrifice on the temple, at the Temple Mount, including idol worshippers.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
The idol worshippers were restricted to just doves and things like that. But anybody could take a sacrifice up there. It's a house of prayer for all nations.
Awesome.
It's not just specifically for us, it's for the whole world. And if the whole world knew it, they'd already had that golden monstrosity knocked down, and it'd be a temple there now. But the world doesn't know it yet.
Toda Roba.
You're welcome. That's the place where God plugs into the world, at the Holy of Holies. He's not even plugged into the world yet, and we can feel him. Imagine how it's going to be when that Holy of Holies is back, and the Shekinah is sitting there, and they're plugged back into earth. Wow. The whole earth will know. The whole earth will feel it. It's just cool. I love to think about things like that. And God's love. 6:26. Okay, well, we're going to keep doing this Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at 10 at night, and Wednesday at 8. And hopefully, I mean, the first couple of nights we did it, we had some nice crowds, and we have a nice, comfortable group this evening. It's easier to talk about things because there's not so many people. But I'm hoping that more and more people will come and join in with us and hear about the truth, is what I'm hoping. If you know anybody, just have them stop in and say hi, and they won't get bored because I get to do this, and I have fun doing this. Wait a minute, let me just show you what I'm talking about. I can sit wherever I want. I love it. I can sit in my chair and travel all over Israel, or all over the world, with these green screen backgrounds.
Paul, can I ask you what time it is there now? I'm trying to coordinate that with our time.
6:38.
6:38? Okay, so we're 4
AM.
hours later. Okay,
AM.
AM.
Yeah, it's
So
morning.
10 o'clock on you said
No, it's
Sunday,
10 o'clock
Monday, Tuesday?
Eastern. 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time.
Oh, so it'd be 10 o'clock. Oh, no
Yeah.
problem. Okay.
10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, which is 5 o'clock in the morning my time.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
You're on the same schedule.
Yeah.
Our guy here is nice to us. He tells us in Eastern Standard Time. Rabbi Goldberg always said it's Jerusalem. Shouldn't...
Yeah, it's a little tough. He gets confused sometimes about the difference in time.
Since he did that, I put it on my phone. I have my regular time and then Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's right. You can do that. I forgot. I have that too. I haven't used it in a long time. I have the time where all my kids are and everything, whatever time zone they're in. So I know what time it is if I call them, but I never use it. Now, what I want to say is that you choose the person that your go-to person. That's your rabbi. That's your teacher. You can hear things and learn things from everybody else. It's okay. But here's how it works for me. If I have a question, especially about what we call halakha, the Jewish laws, the Sephardim think one way, the Ashkenazi think another way sometimes, and sometimes two Ashkenazi rabbis think a little bit different here or there. So what happens is, if I want an answer to a question, I'm not allowed to go ask 3 different rabbis and then choose the one I want. I can go ask a rabbi his opinion on something, and he can give me his opinion. Hello. He can give me his opinion, and then if I say, well, I want a psak din, I want to know what the law is. Once he gives it to me, I can't go to another rabbi and say, tell me what your psak din is, what your decision is on this particular thing. And then I can change the first thing I heard. You're not allowed to do that. So we can ask people their opinions, but if we ask for a ruling, we have to accept the ruling that is given to us. We can't change it after that. So sometimes people will come and ask opinions of different ruling rabbis, and then they'll decide which one to make the final question to, because they think it'll be closer to what they think or whatever, but it's never exactly. But once the question's been asked and answered by now these people are called posachim. They're people that, if you have a question about certain thing in the law, they can give you an answer, but they all have specialties. One has specialties on kitchenware and how you store things. One has a specialty on food. One has a specialty on family purity. One has a specialty on, everybody has a specialty because nobody can know it all. There ain't no know-it-alls. So when you go and ask as a Noahide, if you go and ask a rabbi something, he's not an expert at it. And the first thing he does is reach for the Jewish law in his head and then somehow try to relate that over, but he doesn't have that authority to do a psak. In other words, this is the way it is. He can give you an answer, but he can't say this is the way it is, because he doesn't have the learning for that. There is no course you can take for that particular thing. Look, I'm taking, see how thick this book is? Look at how many pages it is. It's about 600 pages. What does it say there? The laws of Shabbat, of Shabbos. This is volume 2 of 4. Just laws about the Sabbath. When I want to know about the Sabbath, I have all these books I can look up, but I have a very specific rabbi I go to and ask him questions. And now I'm learning from that rabbi, and we're going through this book together. And at the end of the learning, I get a certificate that I've finished the learning and everything. And you get 4 of these certificates together, and I already have one from Milk and Meat. You get 4 certificates together about different subjects, and it's just like to getting a BA degree. And once you've gotten the 4 subjects together, they give you the title, the official title, rabbi. That it becomes an official title. Hi, Blaine. But the word rabbi simply means teacher. So who gives a person the most honor is when you call your teacher a rabbi, and that you're appointing him as your teacher. And it's a little confusing because there are people out there that, and there's some famous people that never got the 4 certificates. They didn't finish their college credits, but they're teachers, and you call them rabbi because they are teachers. They've earned it teaching and doing the things that are right and everything else. So it's a little confusing to people. People think if they have the name rabbi, then they know everything. I can ask them any question, but you really can't. You have to know who to ask to get a question from a person that knows what they're talking about. And now the other guys know, but they're pulling it from the Jewish side. They don't know about the other side. So you can get answers from them, or sometimes they'll give you half answers, and you have to figure out the rest yourself or something. So the person that you can communicate with the best should be your teacher. That's simple. Some people, 2 teachers can teach the same exact subject at a university. One of them, you go into their class and walk out and say, wow, I learned something today. The other one, you walk out of their class and boy, I sweated that whole 45 minutes. I have no idea what he said. And they said the same thing. One presented it this way and one presented it that way. So that's why you have to be comfortable with who you're with.
I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing, having 2 different opinions or views of a subject.
Well, that's true. You can have, but you can have, just like if there's a very specific way to do something, you need the right way. But if there's two different opinions on how to do the same thing, then you learn both. But you still, look, I learned that as an Ashkenazi, which is a European Jew, this is the way we do it. One of the biggest things is on Passover coming up, we don't eat rice and we don't eat beans and we don't eat that kind of stuff. But Sephardim do. Their rabbis say it's okay. Now, because I follow Chabad, I'm not going to say, okay, but I'm going to do what the Sephardi do at Passover time because that's what I like. I like to eat my rice and I like to eat my beans. Once you're following a way, you're not allowed to, just because your opinion wants to do something else, you can't do it. You just once you've chosen a way to follow, the most important thing is to follow it and follow your teacher. If that's who's going to be the person that you want to learn from. I follow the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, and his opinions on a lot of things are more stringent than other people's opinions. But there's other people's opinions that are more lenient, so I could go to those opinions. Right now, there's a big, very high-level rabbinic discussion going on about we have to be alone for Passover Seder. So the first time, many people will be doing it alone in their homes in their whole lives, because every Passover, they're used to going to their parents' house, to their grandparents' house, and all that kind of thing. And this year, nobody's allowed to congregate. We have to stay in our homes, just like in the original Passover. And some of the higher Sephardic rabbis have ruled it's okay to do a Zoom room for a Passover Seder, so that grandparents and relatives can all congregate together, even though they can't congregate together. The Ashkenazim say absolutely not. It's a Yom Tov. A Yom Tov is almost like a Shabbat. There's certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. You can cook food, but you can't light a fire. So you have to light a fire in your home or a candle, and if you want to cook your food, you transfer fire from the candle to your gas top. You're not allowed to use your oven. And yes, that's exactly right, and exactly what you wrote in. It's once you choose a teacher, you have a question. If you ask the question, the teacher has to be smart enough to get you the information and tell you where he got it from. Yes, you're exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. If you need information, you may go find it yourself if you wish. But when you go to your teacher and you ask the question, you have to accept the answer he gives you. You're not allowed to say, well, I don't accept the answer this time. And you should have that much trust in your teacher and know you're going to get the truth every time. People make mistakes, that happens. But, and then the teacher should be wise enough to correct himself if he makes a mistake, and humble enough. So I can't say, okay, I'm Ashkenazi Chabad, and Chabad says you don't eat rice and you don't eat beans. But then here I am coming up into Passover, and I say to myself, gee, I'd love to have a bowl of rice with some butter or some fried rice or something. But and I know that if I say, okay, it's okay for the Sephardim, so it must be okay for me. It's not okay for me because I'm walking this other road. The most important thing is following your teacher. There's a story and I forget where it is in the writings somewhere, where God sent one of the prophets to a certain family in Israel. And he says, go have a l'chaim with them, have a little drink and talk to them and talk to their father. And this prophet went to this family He gathered the sons around. He pulls out a thing of wine. He says, come on, we're going to make l'chaim. We're going to have a little glass of wine because it's okay. And the boys said, no, we're not going to drink with you. He said, why? He says, because our father told us we shouldn't drink wine. We shouldn't drink of fermented beverages. So the prophet was a little stymied. I'm thinking it's Jeremiah, but I'm not sure. He didn't know what to do. So when he left, God said, well, did you do what I tell you to do? Of course, God knew the answer. He said, are you kidding? I tried to do a l'chaim with these people. And they said they refused me. They said they were going to follow what their father taught them. Any idea what God said back to Jeremiah? If only everybody would listen to me like those boys listened to their father. He wasn't upset that they did what their father told them. And that's what he expects from all of us eventually, to listen to what he tells us, our Father. It's hard sometimes. Sometimes there's certain things we just do not want to do. You know, as Shira and I became more machmir, it's called, as we became stricter and stricter in our observances, you know what the very hardest thing for us to do was? Before Shabbat, turn off the phones and the computers. I used to leave my phone on, in case one of my kids, in case one of my kids wanted it, but I wanted that phone on. But we found out something, and it's difficult to do it at first. But once you get used to it, you look forward to it.
Don't tell my wife, but when the phone goes missing, it's okay.
It's just unbelievable. We talked about it just the other day. It was so hard to put it down. Now we know, oh boy, we're disconnected. We have this time on Shabbat. It's a special time. I wish it was all time of rest, but it wasn't. There's still a lot of things we have to do on Shabbat for God. But at least we're disconnected from that part. We can focus on with God on that day, do only what he tells us to do. So anyway, I think I'm going to shut it down for tonight. I still got to do some things today. And sorry we got started late, but the electricity was off, so I couldn't do anything. Let's see. Right now it's Wednesday. It's Tuesday night there, right? Wednesday, 8 o'clock Wednesday evening is when we're going to do the meeting, and then we'll be then we'll be closed till next Sunday. So 4 days on, 3 days off. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it very much, and hope to see you as regularly as you can make it. And if you can't make it, don't feel guilty. It's okay. We appreciate it. Well, anything you want, just message me or whatever. I'll be very happy to answer your questions, any of you. But just where some of you came from, when you wanted to get to somebody when you needed help, what did they do? I'll talk to my secretary. Let's make an appointment. Let's come in. And sometimes they'd send an assistant to answer you. Sharon and I are very open. Just, you don't bother us. So just shoot us the questions, and we will be more than happy to help out any way we can. And sometimes people just need to vent. You can do that too. It's okay. Emma, Tony, Bonnie, Diana, Blaine, thanks you guys for coming in, and appreciate it. Hope to see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All right?
All
Good
right.
night.
Thank you, Pesach.
Have a great day.
You too. For a great night.
Yeah, I'm about to go to sleep. So.